Ever wonder why sleep feels like a losing game lately? You own the fancy mattress. You've dialed in the thermostat. Your room is quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat, and still, you wake up feeling like your brain got left on a bus overnight. Meanwhile, people in the Middle Ages, yes, the folks who worried about plagues and pitchforks, were quietly running one of the most effective sleep systems humans have ever used. No gummies, no apps, no sleep coach. Just a rhythm that worked. Today we call it biphasic sleep, and if you've ever stared at the ceiling at 2 a.m., you've already brushed up against it. Here's the twist. That middle-of-the-night wide-awake thing you think is broken. Medieval people would have called it normal. Expected, even. They didn't panic when their eyes popped open. They got up and did something with that time. Their nights flowed in two deliberate acts. A first sleep that kicked off soon after darkness fell about 4 hours. Then a calm, wakeful interval around midnight that lasted roughly 2 hours. After that, they eased back into a second sleep that carried them to dawn. No drama, no doom scrolling. Just a comfortable intermission in the middle of the night. During those quiet hours, homes didn't turn into raves. They breathed. Picture a one-room house settling into the hush, embers pulsing in the hearth, a rushlight or thin candle throwing a soft cone of gold over a lap. People whispered, prayed, or traded stories in low voices. A husband might mend a strap. A wife might pick up her embroidery without the daytime chorus of chores tugging her sleeve. In monasteries, that interval became a sweet spot for the most focused prayers. In towns, the stillness was handy for practical tasks, checking slow-burning kilns, tending a stew that took all night, or getting a head start on dough so the morning loaves rose on time. That wasn't burning the midnight oil out of procrastination. It was built into the plan. What's striking is how natural this pattern seems for us biologically. In the 1,990 seconds, researchers removed artificial light from volunteers' lives, letting darkness and daylight do their thing. Within weeks, people slipped into a two-stage sleep rhythm. First sleep, wakeful interval, second sleep without being told to. It's as if the body, when given the chance, remembers an older script. Modern language calls the in-between state relaxed alertness. Medieval folks had their own name for it, the watching hour. They thought those minutes belonged to clearer thoughts, deeper prayers and conversations that went somewhere real, and the records back up how intentional this was. Household guides from the period listed perfectly respectable between-sleeps activities. Mending, quiet reading, gentle stretching, mindful prayer, soft talk. Physicians even weighed in some recommended, contemplating the images of a dream from the first sleep, not because they believed in magic, but because the mind felt especially clear and unhurried then. One medical writer praised slow, unstrenuous movement during the watching hour and, hilariously, warned against vigorous practice of the sword. Apparently a few overeager knights had to be told, put the broadsword down until sunrise. This wasn't just a noble pastime. Archaeology and inventories show evidence of life built around those hours across classes. Homes feature small sitting niches, cozy corners where a person could perch with a bit of handiwork. Simple holders for rushlights. Long, slow-burning wicks turn up in cottages, as well as manor houses. Even the language hints at it. Letters and diaries casually reference what people did between the sleeps, the same way we might mention brushing our teeth. One merchant preferred to balance his accounts then, when the world was quiet and numbers behaved. A noblewoman wrote poetry in those intervals, swearing the silence pulled clear lines out of her like thread. Hospitals noticed, too. Night nurses recorded that patients became chatty and sharp during the midnight waking, so they scheduled certain medicines and crucial observations precisely then. It wasn't superstition. It was repeatable experience. And if you're thinking, okay, but weren't they all just chronically exhausted? Not necessarily. They didn't pound espresso at 10 p.m., flood their eyes with blue light, and then blame themselves when sleep went sideways. Their nights were truly dark, and that made all the difference. Let's talk about that darkness, because it's a character in this story. We have no idea how bright our nights are until you've stood under a medieval sky. No street lamps, no LED billboards, no digital clocks blinking through curtains. Even in cities, tall buildings choked moonlight. Candles existed, yes, but they were precious. People rationed them. A single beeswax candle could be a luxury. So after sunset, life dimmed. That long, unbroken night let the body pour on melatonin, the hormone that cues sleep without competing signals. Doctors of the day didn't know the word, but they felt the principle. They advised, keep your sleeping space as dark as you can. One physician, in copybook prose, wrote that sleep comes best to those who wrap themselves in darkness, as in a warm cloak. Poetic and pretty accurate. Darkness shaped daily routines in clever ways. Crafts requiring sharp eyes, fine embroidery, illuminations, delicate cutting were discouraged after sunset to protect vision and quality. Towns sometimes priced goods higher after dark to cover the extra candle use, which nudged people to finish business by day. Architects responded to the dim reality with light-catching details. Pale interior plaster to bounce daylight deeper into rooms, little curved niches, light cups, that amplified a single flame, and east-facing windows that ushered in gentle morning light in place of alarm clocks. In monasteries, there were even keepers of darkness, tasked with ensuring the dormitory stayed free of stray flames so monks could settle into natural sleep cycles. Imagine a medieval sleep guardian patrolling for a rogue taper. Cozy and a little metal. All this darkness had predictable benefits. If you spend 6 to 8 hours in low light before bed because the sun went down and the world actually stayed dim, your body doesn't need a lecture about when to wind down. Medieval hospitals leaned into that. Wards were positioned to avoid early rays from waking patients, and thick curtains weren't decor, they were medicine. Caretakers noticed people in darker rooms tended to heal more quickly. They chalked it up to the calm of shadow. Today, we'd point to hormones and circadian rhythms. Same effect, different vocabulary. But the night wasn't just dark. It was sociable too, sometimes very literally. Our idea of privacy of a bed you own and guard like a dragon hoard didn't exist for most people then. Inns commonly paired strangers when space was tight. Magistrates even fined innkeepers for wasting firewood by splitting travellers into separate rooms. Warmth was a shared project. Beds were wide, often short. People preferred to sleep propped up, and designed for multiple bodies. Families arranged sleepers like a heat map, young ones in the middle, adults at the edges because kids run warm. Monasteries had rules for bedfellows. Keep decent distance, no wandering limbs, and yes, penalties for the serial sprawler. Somewhere in the archives, a weary prior is writing, "Brother Thomas, keep your knees to yourself." Was it always charming? No. There are glorious complaints. The operatic snorer, the blanket thief, the stranger who sang sea shanties in his sleep. Inns innovated with snorers' chambers, and some kept informal matching systems pair an early rising baker with another baker so he doesn't rattle a merchant awake at 4. But for all the awkwardness, those shared beds did two things spectacularly well. They kept people warm in drafty spaces, and they lowered the friction around sleep. No fretting over the perfect temperature. No scrolling through mattress reviews. You got in, shared heat, dozed off. Simple. That simplicity ran straight through their whole approach. They didn't measure sleep like a performance metric. They lived in ways that made sleep a natural consequence. Darkness was real. Evenings were quieter. The body did honest work, and that midnight interval, far from being a crisis, was a gift. A chance to reset, think softly, stitch a hem, whisper a prayer, scribble a line, check the stew, or just sit and feel the house breathe, then back to bed for the second act. So, if you've woken at 2 a.m. lately and felt that low tide in your thoughts, the kind that isn't anxious, just awake. What if you treated it the way your ancestors did? Not as a failure, but as a feature. Keep the lights low. Do something gentle. Let the watching hour be what it wants to be. A narrow, quiet bridge between two pieces of sleep. When you cross it without panic, the second shore, second sleep, comes faster than you'd think. Let's zoom in on the bedroom itself, or what passed for one. Forget the Instagram palette and the clean aesthetic. Medieval sleeping areas were practical machines for rest. Purpose, built around what actually made people sleep. Darkness, quiet, and warmth. In a small timbered house, you might find a curtained box bed. Think of a wooden alcove with shutters or thick hangings to trap heat and block drafts. Families treated those curtains like tools, not decor. Close them and you create your own microclimate, warmer by several degrees. If your house had only one heated room, the bed lived right there by the hearth. because keeping the body's core temperature steady was the difference between an easy descent into sleep and a long, shivery night. Bedding looked humble but acted smart. The workhorse mattress was the straw tick, a stout linen sack packed with fresh straw after the harvest and fluffed regularly. Sounds rustic, but straw breathes, and breathability matters. Your body dumps heat as you fall asleep. A surface that wicks air around you helps. In summer, people loosened the stuffing for more airflow. In winter, they packed it tight and layered woolen blankets over the top. Some households slipped herbs into the straw. Lavender and mint were favorites to repel insects and scent the air. You can roll your eyes at herb lore, but try sleeping on a stale, bug-prone feather bed and see how quickly you convert to Team Lavender. Feather beds existed, sure, but they were status symbols with maintenance headaches. Feathers compress, trap moisture, and attract critters. Plenty of well-off folks kept two beds, the show bed with puff and pomp, and the good bed with straw they actually slept on, especially in summer. There's a funny rhythm you can hear in household accounts. Harvest season arrives, straw changes, old straw goes to the animals or the garden. Everyone sleeps better again. A mattress you can refresh with a scythe on a sunny afternoon is, in its way, the ultimate sustainable design. Look around the rest of the room and you'll spot how architecture helped the body keep time. East-facing shutters let dawn slip in at the right hour. Walls were plastered pale to lift daylight deeper into the space. Little curved recesses on the wall amplified a single candle's reach. One flame, many reflections. Floors? Packed earth or timber, often strewn with rushes or simple rugs to cut down on dust and cold. Noise control was a real problem. Thin walls, clacking streets, so people solved it with layout. Sleeping chambers retreated from the noisiest edges of a house. Monasteries placed dormitories down long corridors. Inns tucked rest spaces behind the main hall where the laughter died to a hum. Not perfect. Good enough. The social side of sleep shaped the room too. Beds were big. Not California King flat rectangles, but deep platforms, sometimes with a slight tilt so you could sleep propped up. People believed lying completely flat invited bad humors and terrible dreams. Also, sleeping upright-ish helped digestion. Picture 2, 3, 4 bodies arranged like puzzle pieces. Children in the lush, warm center, elders near the edge with a foot to the floor for easy midnight trips to the chamber pot or the banked embers. Household guides even diagrammed positions for maximum warmth and minimal annoyance. Early risers outward, leg kickers inward, notorious blanket bandits nowhere near the corner where the cover slips. And because sleep wasn't a competition, the tools were common sense. Need to wake before dawn? Don't wrench your nervous system with a bell that screams. You move your bed where the first light lands. You stuff a pillow sachet with rosemary and mint calming, but not sedating, so you pop up easier. Or you bunk with another baker who's guaranteed to stir at 4 because flour waits for no one. The medieval equivalent of a shared calendar invite was simply sleeping next to the person whose schedule matched yours. Let's talk about that midnight interval again, because it doubled as a family's daily quiet hour. In a cramped house, privacy doesn't mean no one around. It means the gentle permission to be unhurried. After first sleep, the room belonged to delicate tasks and soft voices. A mother might patch a tear by rushlight. A father might check tools for the coming day. Someone might steep a cup of herb tea, softening water over embers instead of relighting the fire. Often, couples use the interval for intimacy. Period guides even recommend those hours as the healthiest time. When bodies are warm, the mind is unhurried, and the house is still. No one needed to force a vibe at 11 p.m. The night handed it to them at 1. That built-in pause had a ripple effect on mood. You know the grey dread that creeps in when you can't sleep, the "oh no, I'm going to ruin tomorrow" spiral? They didn't script their nights that way. Wakefulness wasn't the villain, it was intermission. When you expect it, you don't fear it. When you don't fear it, it shrinks. That alone can convert a midnight stare-down into something closer to a lull. A page of a psalter, a quiet prayer, a row of stitches, a quick note about wool prices, a small bite of yesterday's bread dipped in warm ale for the stomach. Then the tide turns second. Sleep rolls in like a gentle wave and you go under. Food and fire policies supported the whole rhythm. Without refrigeration, late-night snacking was rare, and kitchens cooled early. Monasteries rang vespers, fires banked, the day stopped. Workers ate their main meal at midday, a lighter supper before dusk, and let digestion do its work before first sleep. Physicians noticed the obvious. Heavy food late equals hot, jumbled dreams and a restless night. So they told patients to align meals with the sun, not the candle. If your last light is skylight, you don't need a lecture about no pizza after 10. Daily life kept bodies honestly tired. Farmers walked fields like they owned the land twice, with their feet ploughing, mending fences, carrying water. Craftspeople repeated motions that made strength without gym mirrors. Kneading bread for half an hour per batch. Swinging a hammer until the elbow sang. Walking a loom thousands of steps in a day. City folk climbed and carried up narrow stairs. Across markets hauling buckets, bundles, ledgers, news. Even rest work, like carding wool or spinning, kept hands busy in slow, meditative grooves. Did overwork exist? Of course. But the baseline was motion, not sitting. By nightfall, sleep didn't need convincing. And then there's how little they worried about it all. We grade our nights like exams and check dashboards in the morning, as if sleep is a niche for self-optimization. They treated it like breathing. If you nodded off during a long winter prayer, your brother nudged you, not your ego. If you slept late after a harvest push, your neighbors understood. The sun and the season were your timekeepers, not a universal 6 a.m. productivity gospel. When doctors did give sleep hygiene advice, it sounded like common sense. Keep the room dark, air it when the weather allows, move your body by day, don't overeat at night, embrace quiet. That's not a hack, that's a habitat. Herbs with a soft edge to that habitat. Lavender for calming, hops for deepening sleep, chamomile to soften the mind's grip. People slipped dried sachets into pillows, brewed small nightcaps, or rubbed infused oils at the temples. Monasteries tended sleep gardens like pharmacies tuned to the circadian scale. Nothing sedative enough to knock you out, just small nudges in the right direction. If a remedy failed, you didn't argue with the universe. You adjusted your day. Stack hay tomorrow. Walk farther. Put the bed closer to the hearth this week. Change the straw. Shift the shutters. Take that entire ecosystem together. Dark evenings, two-phase nights, quiet intermission, social warmth, breathable beds, food when the sun is high, honest movement, herbal whispers, and you get a system that asks very little of willpower and very much of environment. It is low-tech, high design. It doesn't promise you'll never have a bad night. It guarantees that most nights don't need to be good to be enough. Sleep becomes not an achievement, but a tide you cooperate with. First, sleep flows out. The watching hour exposes the sand. Second, sleep returns and covers everything in smoothness. Maybe that's the medieval secret hiding in plain sight. They didn't chase sleep. They arranged their lives so sleep could find them. If you really want to understand why their nights worked, follow the money and the rules. Darkness wasn't just a vibe. It was an economy and, in many places, the law. Candles cost real coin, and using them after sunset meant literally burning your budget. That's why markets wound down with daylight, and why shopkeepers didn't haggle at night. The extra flame wasn't ambience, it was overhead. Some towns even had posted curfews not just to keep the peace, but to stop needless light spend. Picture a bell tolling, shutters swinging shut, the main square fading to silhouettes, and a city exhaling into sleep. No neon to fight. No endless glow to trick your brain into thinking it's perpetually early evening. That policy-level stuff shaped behavior far more than personal willpower. We like to imagine sleep is about grit. Get off your phone, be disciplined. But the medieval approach made the healthy choice the easy one. Want to stay up late working? Great. Pay for candles, squint more, and risk a fine. Most people said, pass. And let the dark win because the dark was supposed to win after sunset. When you live in a world that turns the brightness dial down for you, you don't wrestle your nervous system into bed. It glides. Law and custom reached right into the bedroom layout. Box beds with sliding doors weren't just cute. They were insulation and privacy in a single piece of carpentry. Hangings around the frame created a pocket of warm air. The family didn't heat the whole house. They heated the person. That's efficient design, disguised as coziness. Even the height of the bed mattered. Off the floor meant drier air, and fewer drafts on ankles. Slightly slanted backs meant easier breathing and calmer stomachs when supper had been heavy. 1,000 small decisions, each one taking pressure off the sleeper. And then there was the language, the words people used for rest. They didn't bundle everything under sleep quality. They had naps dozed by the fire, a drowse that draped itself on your shoulders in the afternoon, the two formal sleeps of the night, and the watching hour between. It's subtle, but names create permission. If you have a word for a kind of rest, you're more likely to allow it. We've squeezed all forms of resting into a single, high-stakes bucket where only deep, continuous, trackable sleep counts. No wonder we get anxious. They let small rests be small, and those little permissions kept the pressure off the big sleeps. Let's eavesdrop on the watching hour again, because it did some heavy lifting for mental health. Imagine you've had a packed day: animals, markets, chores, kids, church, guild business. Then first sleep washes the noise out. You wake in the hush. The fire's low. The house is a soft, warm cave. That middle stretch becomes a release valve for thoughts. You don't have to solve your life, just step out of it briefly. A psalm or two, a quiet stitch, a glance at the sky for weather signs. In that space, worries often shrink to their proper size. Then, crucially, you return to bed. It's not a ruminator's trap because it's expected and contained. Intermission ends. The play continues. The structure rescues you from spirals. Evidence of that structure is everywhere in their habits. Monasteries designed schedules around it. Matins in the night, then back to sleep. Towns scheduled ovens and mills so early risers didn't crash into night workers. Even hospitals leveraged it, nudging important observations into the midnight window when patients were wakeful but calm. That's a culture that notices how bodies actually behave and replies, "Okay, let's build around that." We can talk gossip too, because the bedfellow system turned sleep into a social network. Shared beds meant shared stories, deals, apologies, and small peacemakings whispered after first sleep. Inns, those crossroads of rumour and trade, became half bedroom, half bulletin board. If you're picturing chaos, don't. People built etiquette. Where to put your boots, which side to roll toward, how to use your cloak as a buffer, when to get up quietly and rebank the fire so others can drift back. Think of it as the original community guidelines, enforced with shushes, raised eyebrows, and occasionally a fee levied by a grumpy host. Were there frictions? Of course. Snorers got reputations. Blanket thieves were public enemies. The chronic kicker became a punchline in half the town's stories. But even those frictions smoothed out through systems snorers' rooms, pairing like with like, fine forfeit jokes that took the sting out of the inconvenience. The bigger point is that sleep wasn't an isolated, private project. It lived in a web of relationships, and those relationships sometimes made the bed warmer literally and emotionally. We've traded that warmth for privacy, and then tried to buy the warmth back with weighted blankets and white noise. Let's circle to the straw tick, because the more you look at it, the more modern it seems. A mattress you can tune by season, looser in the heat, denser in the cold. A fill you can refresh cheaply when it goes flat, instead of hoping an expensive slab of foam will feel the same in year 8 as it did in year 1. Herbs tucked inside for scent and insects, not as magic, but as a practical edge. Even the maintenance made sense. Turning the straw redistributed wear and restored loft, like fluffing a giant, crinkly pillow. If you slept poorly for a week, your fix wasn't a shopping spree or a subreddit. It was, flip it, change it, add herbs, move the bed closer to the hearth, or patch the draft. Environmental tweaks first, everything else later. Light management was equally tactile. They used shutters like dimmers. They learned their house's sun path like a personal weather app. Where the dawn line crawls across the floor in May, how late the western window holds light in August, which corner cools first in October. Beds moved seasonally the way we move fans. That flexibility, rather than treating the bedroom like a static showroom, let people keep their sleep settings tuned without thinking about it. You could call it adaptive architecture, powered by common sense. Now, about mornings. We imagine medieval days snapping awake at a universal cockcrow, but wake times drifted with seasons and roles. Bells rang, sure, but a winter bell at 7 is not a summer bell at 4, and nobody expected the same energy on both days. Work started when bodies and light agreed it was time. Even in regulated spaces like monasteries, there was ritual ramp-up. Someone stirring gently, feet on cool stone, soft voices, then a slow tide of brothers rising. Out in the world, craft guilds allowed range. Bakers had to be at it early, weavers often later, especially in dark months when eyes needed light. The system breathed. And because it breathed, the anxiety we've attached to oversleeping just wasn't a thing in the same way. The sun and the task at hand set the pace. Food timing held the system together. Make the main meal when your body can burn it. Keep supper modest and early. Let the night be for resting, not digesting. Kitchens enforce this with logistics. Hauling water and fuel is work. Relighting a banked fire is work. Preparation is work. The path of least resistance kept late, night eating rare. And without a heavy, spicy curtain of food hanging over your stomach, first sleep came faster and calmer. It's less willpower, more design friction, a brilliant lever for behavior change we keep discovering and then ignoring. Movement honest, daily unperformed was the other lever. Imagine ending a day after threshing, weaving, carrying, walking, mending, climbing. Your muscles hum, your mind unclenches. Sleep arrives not as a reward, but as the only sensible next thing. We keep trying to manufacture that feeling at 9 p.m., with a workout squeezed between emails and a screen blast. They got it for free, dripped into their tissues by the work that kept them alive. If all of this sounds romantic, remember the reality. Poverty, disease, drafty rooms, noise, and discomfort. But here's the paradox worth holding. Even inside those hard edges, the sleep system, as a system, often helped more than it hurt. The environment aligned with biology. The culture expected wakefulness and gave it a job. The tools were simple, repairable, and adaptable. The metrics were few. No one chased a number. They chased a feeling. Rested enough to do tomorrow. Maybe that's the lesson we can steal without stealing the hardship. We don't need to recreate the 15th century. We can, however, let the night dim earlier, by rule, not by will. Find a small, gentle practice for the watching hour when it comes. Lower the friction around sensible meal timing. Build a bed that breathes, and let mornings expand and contract with the season when we can. Not a heroic program, a habitat. And once a habitat is right, you don't have to micromanage the creature that lives in it. You. Let's step outside the house and into the streets for a minute. Because medieval sleep wasn't just a private habit, it was stitched into the way whole towns ran their nights. Picture sunset in a walled city. Stall boards folding, shutters thudding, the bell sounding curfew, and a watchman lifting a lantern that looks barely bright enough to light his own boots. After that bell, you were expected to be home unless you had a reason sickness, urgent business, a baby deciding now was a great time to arrive. Not every town fined you for light after hours, but lots of places made it inconvenient or mildly expensive to fight the dark. Tallow candles smoked and stank. Beeswax candles glowed beautifully and cost real money. If you burned beeswax at midnight, it wasn't for a vibe. It was because you needed it. The economy quietly nudged people to live in rhythm with the sky. That rhythm changed with the seasons, which gives us another clue about why this whole system felt so humane. Summer nights were short. Winter nights could stretch luxuriously long, especially up north. The two-sleep pattern flexed with that. In January, first sleep ran longer and the watching hours stretched a bit. Second sleep sometimes felt like a cozy encore. In June, everything compressed. You might barely have time to notice the intermission before dawn pressed its face to the shutters. Nobody kept the same rigid bedtime year-round, and because nobody tried, nobody felt broken when the season tugged the schedule around. What did the night feel like? Dense. The kind of black that makes you feel your way across a room with your fingertips grazing familiar edges, the rough settle of a wooden chest, the cool, iron ring of a latch. People got good at darkness in ways we've mostly forgotten. Night watchmen bragged about telling time by sound certain birds at 1 hour, a distant mill changing its rhythm at another. In houses, you learned the footfall signatures of the people you loved, the pregnant sister's slow, careful tread, the boy who scuffed one heel, the old dog's double tap on the rushes. That sensory literacy made nights less spooky and more navigable, and it made the watching hour gentler. You could move without flooding the room with light, without shattering everyone's melatonin with a sudden glare. Inside, sleep gear was simple and smart. Warmth mattered more than softness. So clothes did the heavy lifting. A woolen nightcap to trap heat, you lose a surprising amount from your head. A linen shift or shirt that breathed, maybe hose or socks if the floor was a slab of refrigerated stone. If the house had a warming pan, basically a shallow brass skillet on a stick, you'd slide it under the covers to chase out the worst of the chill before climbing in. It wasn't central heating. It was targeted kindness. Beds sat a few inches off the ground to dodge damp drafts, sometimes on rope lattices that you tightened with a key. Yes, that's where "sleep tight" likely nods. The ropes stretched over time. You'd crank them taut again, your nightly quality control check. We can talk pests, because people then did too. Straw ticks needed attention so they didn't become an Airbnb for insects. Turning the straw, airing it in sunshine, slipping in herbs that bugs didn't love. This wasn't quaint. It was hygiene, just with the tools they had. Wealthier folks who slept on feathers often discovered they'd built a buffet for fleas. Plenty of them retreated to straw in summer, praising how cool and dry it felt. The takeaway isn't straw is superior forever. It's that breathability and refreshability might matter more than opulence if you want a body to cool off and let go. Dreams got a practical seat at the table too. Not in a woo-woo way, but because the watching hour offered a built-in moment to reflect without rush. Fall asleep, dream, wake, think. What did that image feel like? Does it nudge a decision I've been avoiding? A few physicians even noted that dreams from first sleep can mirror the state of the body. A feverish patient's crowded hot images, settling as the illness breaks. You didn't need to believe in prophecy to see the usefulness. The mind makes metaphors. Midnight is a good time to listen, then go back down before the sun starts giving you to-do lists again. Law and order bent around this rhythm as well. If your friend swore he was up mending a cloak between sleeps at the time a theft happened, people took that seriously. The interval was famous for its clarity, less groggy than a wrenching wake-up, more focused than the after-supper drowse. Courts didn't have DNA, but they did have common sense about human patterns. And that watchman's lantern? It wasn't there to light the world. It signaled presence and authority, a moving boundary saying, night belongs to sleep now. If you're out here, you're out with purpose. Hospitals leaned hard on the midnight window. A patient who barely spoke by day might unspool their story at 1 a.m., and nurses learned to catch those threads then. Some medicines timed their arrival for that calm wakefulness. The brain clear, the tongue loosened, the belly quiet. If you've ever tried to swallow a large pill right after a heavy dinner, you understand exactly why waiting helped. The darker wards weren't macabre. They were clinical. Less glare, less strain, less jarring, more healing. Let's peek at monasteries again, because they were sleep laboratories without trying to be. Darkness was curated. Dormitory windows were small and high. Hangings damped drafts. There were roles, someone to keep the coals from dying, someone to make sure no unauthorized candle turned the dorm into a circus. Schedules wrapped around matins, the night office. A bell, quiet rising, prayer in low voices, then a return to second sleep. The order didn't fight biology, it booked it. Even the architecture obeyed the plan. Dormitories aligned so first light touched corridors gently, not blindingly. When monks wrote about drowsiness during long chants, the solutions were human-scaled. Move the sleepiest closer to the cantor. Add a bench for a momentary sit. Except that cold nights pull eyelids down faster. Meal timing made all of this easier. Dinner at midday, light supper before sunset. After that, kitchens cooled and no one wanted to coax a reluctant fire back to life for snacks. If you went to bed without a stone in your stomach, first sleep came more smoothly and dreams were less chaotic. Guilds enforced the pattern because it protected the morning's work. A carpenter fined for heavy meat too late. A weaver scolded for ale after vespers when a big warp awaited at dawn. It sounds fussy until you see the wisdom. Tomorrow's hands function better if tonight's belly isn't smouldering. Travellers adapted in their own way. Inns did their best with the bedfellow lottery, pairing the early risers together, shunting the legendary snorers to the symphony room, and spreading the chronic blanket hogs like butter where they'd do the least harm. If you arrived after dark, you learned the code. Warm ale or wine, a crust. Maybe a leftover stew warmed at the edge of the embers, not a feast. Fires banked, the company dozed. The room sank to whispers. First sleep carried 100 weary bodies at once. If you woke in the watching hour, you weren't alone. A dozen others turned on their pallets, and a few stood to stretch, exchange a murmured word, or sneak a look at the weather beyond the shutters. The quiet itself felt communal. You can see the outlines of a design philosophy here. Instead of willing yourself to sleep, you let the world invite it. Darkness that isn't optional, work that winds down by necessity. A bed you can tune with your hands. Food that lands early. A midnight interval with a reputation for calm, not panic. Mornings that flex with the Sunday. The program is baked into the environment, not downloaded into your head. And here's a small, lovely detail. Endings mattered. People had rituals that told the body, night has begun. Banking the fire just so. Washing feet both clean and warming. Combing out hair. Saying a handful of familiar lines, scripture for some, simple blessings for others. Those cues, repeated daily, did what our 1,000 notifications cannot. They narrowed the lane. Night is for quiet. Night is for soft things. Night is for 2 sleeps and a gentle bridge between them. You cross, you come back, you wake ready. If you squint, you can already see how pieces of that translate now. But before we modernize the recipe, there's one more corner of the medieval sleep universe worth visiting. The bed as a social, economic, and architectural centerpiece, the great bed that held families. Deals, dowries, gossip, and a surprising amount of engineering. Let's climb up on that platform next. Oh, grasp how seriously people took sleep. Look at the great bed. Not just a piece of furniture, but a stage where family life, finance, and architecture all met. In a modest cottage, a bed might be a straw tick on a rope lattice behind a curtain. In a merchant's townhouse or a manor, the principal bed dominated the solar like a ship's prow. High platform, carved posts, heavy hangings, layered bedding, a chest at the foot for linens, and a small arm's-length world arranged within reach. It was the warmest, most defended square of real estate in the building, and it had jobs. Keep heat, create privacy, announce status, and frankly, hold half the household when nights bit down to the bone. Economically, the bed was a bank account in oak and linen. Dowry lists often led with it. 1 good bed with hangings, 4 pairs of sheets, 2 blankets, 1 feather bolster, and so on. In bequests, people earmarked beds for heirs by name, like portable estates. A well-made frame might outlive its maker twice over. Sheets and coverlets were inventory washable wealth you could count and lend. No one put mattress topper in their will, but they absolutely tracked sheets. Fine flax linen for feast days, tough hemp for daily use, winter weight woolen blankets rolled and perfumed against moths, and the prized feather bolster for that royal feeling under the neck, until fleas declared it a sovereign nation, and you retreated to straw with relief. Design served thermal physics as much as taste. 4 posters weren't theatrical by accident. Curtains trapped body heat, damped drafts, muted sounds, and absorbed stray light so first sleep arrived quicker. Under you, a mesh of ropes formed the foundation, tightened with a bed key, hence sleep tight. Ropes slowly slackened, so one of the tiny chores of life was the satisfying ratchet of tension, restoring that firm float. On top, the straw tick, fluffed, turned, and seasonally repacked. In richer homes, a feather bed layered above straw for a softer top with a breathable base. An extra tick could be slid under the knees or back for someone convalescing custom ergonomics, medieval edition. Architecture bent to the bed's needs. In winter, the great bed migrated nearer to the hearth or into a smaller, better-sealed chamber. In summer, it might shift to catch a cross breeze from opposing shutters. Upper floors warmed by rising air and safer from door drafts, won out as sleeping spaces when stairs allowed. Builders added low interior screens to cut the path of a draft that knifed across a room. Floors near beds wore rugs or layered rushes for the midnight pad to the ember pan or the chamber pot. The bed commanded room placement like a grand piano does today. Everything else orbited it. Socially, it was the house's velvet rope area and its town square, both at once. Newborns spent their first nights at the bed's edge or in a cradle within arm's reach. The elderly, the feverish, the grieving all gravitated to that warm core. It was where marriages were blessed and, in some places, witnessed in the sense of community acknowledgement, not spectacle. Agreements were whispered there, reconciliations made, lullabies hummed, and yes, gossip traded under covers like contraband. Travellers bunked in the best bed, at an inn not because it was singularly comfortable, though it often was, but because it promised heat, curtains, and a measure of quiet away from the ale bench and its late-blooming songs. Linens were a microeconomy. Spinning, weaving, bleaching, washing, mending, an invisible industry that made sleep possible. Good sheets mattered more than plush mattresses, smooth, cool, and clean against skin that didn't meet hot showers daily. Laundresses boiled linens with lye, beat them, rinsed in running water, and spread them on bleaching greens to drink sun and wind. That sun-sweet smell wasn't romance. It was hygiene and comfort. A set of fresh sheets, crisply stretched and folded under, could make a straw tick feel like an upgrade. People knew it. Whole chapters of household guides fuss over sheet rotation and storage, perfuming chests with lavender and rosemary to discourage moths and to lace sleep with a calm scent. Bed hangings did more than keep warmth. They told stories. In wealthy rooms, embroidered scenes heraldry, saints, gardens turned the inside of the bed into a private gallery. For the less rich, dyed wool or plain linen did the same basic job, and the aesthetic was shadow and silhouette. The rhythm of the curtain pleats, a candle's glow softening the cloth to amber. Safety factored in too. The distance between flame and fabric mattered. Fire was the night's great risk. People learned where to place a rushlight so it lit a lap, but not a drape, and how to bank a brazier so embers warmed without throwing sparks. Pets and livestock interacted with sleep in ways modern readers both recognize and find startling. Cats owned the bed's feet like tiny tyrants. Small dogs were admitted by some households and banned by others for the same reason. Heat versus fleas. In poorer cottages, animals might sleep in a lower pen or at the far end of the room, their slow warmth a comfort and their smells a fact of life managed with airing and herbs. Morning chores began literally at the bedside. Stir coals, crack shutter, greet the animal chorus, swing legs to the floor, and feel for your shoes with your toes. Travel scaled the system down. Bedrolls, blankets layered over a folded cloak, a spare shirt for a pillow with a portable version of the home bed. Travellers learned to read an inn's promises by its linens. Clean? Well mended? Properly aired? A canny host aired straw in the yard on sunny days, flipping ticks like loaves, selling the sight itself as a pledge of comfort. Our straw is fresh was as close as you got to a 5-star badge nailed over a door. Guilds and trades touched the bed too. Bedmakers joiners who specialized in frames and testers left signatures in carved patterns. Rope makers supplied the lattices, knotting loops at regular spacing like a musical staff. Straw turners did rounds seasonally, fluffing, replacing, inspecting for pests, swapping summer loose for winter dents, and tucking in sachets. Apothecaries sold sleep blends. Chandlers sold graded candles and rush pith. Fullers worked the wool that became blankets. A city's sleep rested on a web of crafts, humming just below the threshold of attention. And the rules kept nights in tune. Curfews dimmed streets. Guild codes frowned on after-dark fine work to protect eyes and workmanship. Monasteries maintained darkness keepers. Hospitals shielded wards from dawn glare so second sleep could finish its work. Even the courts respected the predictable midnight wakefulness. I was at my embroidery between sleeps. Could be a credible alibi, not because of superstition, but because the whole culture recognized the pattern. All of this made the great bed less a pedestal of luxury and more an engine of predictability. It gathered heat, softened sound, and narrowed light. It placed bodies together in a way that solved problems: cold, fear, loneliness, illness. It accepted the night's 2 acts and gave the intermission a private theatre. It could be tuned with hands tighten ropes, turn straw, shift the frame, change the sheets, swap the hangings, slide a brazier closer. No dashboards, no data anxiety. A system you can understand by candlelight at 1 in the morning is a system that invites sleep to return. Were there failures? Of course. Infestations, smoky tallow, damp rooms, money too tight for extra blankets, inns where the symphony room lived up to its name. But the baseline design stacked little advantages until rest became likely. Darkness lifted willpower's burden. Linen lifted the skin. Straw lifted the body. Curtains lifted the mood. Company lifted the heart. And in that lift, first sleep arrived. The watching hour passed without panic, and second sleep washed back in, steady as breathing. Hold that blueprint in your hand, because the next move is obvious. You don't need a manner's great bed to borrow its logic. You need a bed you can tune, light you can lower by rule, air that moves, sheets that breathe, and rituals that tell your body night has a shape. From there, medieval sleep stops being a museum exhibit and starts being a toolkit. Let's turn that blueprint into something you can actually live with now, no loot required. You don't need a castle, a monk's schedule, or a straw harvest to borrow what worked. You need levers. Medieval knights succeeded because they leaned on a handful of environmental levers that don't argue, don't get tired, and don't require motivation. Pull those same levers today, and you get 80% of the benefit without reenacting the 15th century. First lever, darkness by rule, not by willpower. In towns, the bell rang and light dropped. You can do the same with technology that obeys you even when you're sleepy. Put your lamps on plugs or smart switches with a hard cutoff, say 2 hours before bed. The house shifts to candlelight mode, low, warm bulbs only. Screens, not a moral issue, just a physics one. Set them to quit early on a schedule you can't snooze. Your future self, marinated in melatonin, will thank your past self for being bossy. Draft a curfew for brightness. After the cutoff, the only light you allow is small, targeted, and low to the ground. Think a single lamp on the far side of the room or a warm nightlight on the floor, not a ceiling blaze. Reduce big sky light. Keep tiny task light. That's medieval logic in LED clothing. Second lever, treat the bedroom like a heat trap, not a showroom. The box bed did 2 jobs: insulate and isolate. Your version is layers and microclimates. If the room is cooler, your core sleeps happier as long as the microclimate around your skin stays steady. That's where breathable bedding beats plushness. Think cotton or linen sheets that let heat and moisture escape, a wool blanket that insulates without smothering, and a comforter you can peel back in the night without drama. The medieval bed's curtains became your modern draft management seal windows well. Run a small, quiet fan for air movement without chill. And if your room runs loud, use a steady sound, not the audio equivalent of fireworks. So random noises get sanded down to a hush. Third lever, make the bed tunable. Ropes and straw let people dial firmness and breathability. Today, take set and forget out of your sleep vocabulary. If your mattress is a swamp in summer and a board in winter, it's not broken. It's just static. Use toppers you can swap seasonally, latex or wool for breathability, thin rather than thick. Rotate the mattress. And this matters, wash and reset the whole stack more than you think. Medieval homes change straw post-harvest. You can replicate the reset by laundering sheets hot, airing blankets in sun, yes, actual sun, and remaking the bed tight. Crisp sheets turn a middling mattress into a better one because friction and fit stop you from fighting wrinkles all night. Fourth lever, ritual as a dimmer for the nervous system. They banked fires, washed feet, combed hair, said familiar lines. Your list can be charmingly small. A quick face, rinse with warm water. 2 minutes to pick up the room so your eyes don't snag on shoulds. A couple of slow stretches to tell muscles off duty. And a single page of something gentle, not a cliffhanger. Repeat it enough, and your body starts preloading sleep as soon as you reach for the washcloth. Ritual is not magic. It's Pavlov with a blanket. Fifth lever, the watching hour rebranded as a feature, not a bug. If you wake in the middle of the night, script it in advance, the way they did. Keep a between sleeps kit in a drawer. A dim clip light, a small notebook, a quiet hand project, herbal tea bags, or a bottle of water. No phone, no overhead lights, no doom portal. Give yourself a lane. Sit up, do 15 unhurried minutes of something soft, and go back to bed without up, regulating the room. If nothing calls to you, just breathe while staring into the dark. Treat the interval like a porch between rooms, cross it, don't move in. Expect it sometimes, and it loses its teeth. Sixth lever, meal timing with gravity on your side. Dinner in daylight, and a modest evening bite. This wasn't virtue, it was logistics. Your updated rule, finish your last substantial food 2 to 3 hours before first sleep. Not as penance, but as a kindness to the body trying to cool down and slow down. If late meals happen, life, kids, flights, trim fat and spice, eat less than you want, and drink warm rather than icy. Monasteries rang vespers and the kitchen closed. Your version is a kitchen's banked ritual. Wipe counters, lights to low, kettle off, day done. Your belly's dreams will be less operatic. Seventh lever, honest movement, diffused across the day. They didn't work out, they worked. You can bake tired on purpose into your day without a 90-minute gym session at 9 p.m. Stack movement where you live. Walking meetings, stairs, carry something heavy for 5 minutes on purpose. Tidy to music, stretch while the kettle warms, stand for 10 minutes each hour. Aim for pleasantly used up, not smashed. If sleep dodges you, tomorrow's prescription is not shame. It's a bit more sun, a bit more steps, and a bit less chair. 8th lever. Herbs as gentle nudges, not knockout blows. Lavender, chamomile, hops. None of them are miracle hacks, but all of them nudge. Try a small sachet in the pillowcase. A few drops of diluted lavender on a tissue tucked near the bed, or a simple tea an hour before first sleep. If you wake at 1, warm water plus a squeeze of honey and a slice of ginger is an old trick that sits friendly in the stomach and doesn't jolt you awake. Keep remedies boring. The more boring they are, the less drama your brain attaches to sleep. 9th lever. Mornings that breathe with the season. Medieval bells moved with dawn. Yours can too, inside reason. If your life allows it, widen the window of acceptable wake time by 30 to 60 minutes. Use 2 alarms, a first one soft and early, light birds, low chime, and a second one as a no, really. Put the first by the window, not your ear, so light and sound mingle. On bright months, let morning into the room. East light is a free circadian reset. On dark months, use a warm, gradual lamp rather than a phone blast. The point isn't to heroically jump, it's to rise the way a choir enters one voice, then another, then full. 10th lever. Social warmth without the snore lottery. You don't need to bunk with strangers to borrow the benefit. You do need to notice that loneliness gets loud at night. If sleep anxiety is your companion, schedule human contact late afternoon or early evening, call a friend, share a walk, eat with someone. The body that felt seen at sunset rests quieter at midnight. If you share a bed, build a pact as medieval hosts did. Who runs hot, who steals covers, who wakes early. Solve with layers, not fights. Separate blankets on one mattress is not a failure. It's a peace treaty. 11th lever. Noise the medieval way predictable. Dull. Steady. Streets weren't silent, but they were patterned. A watchman, distant hooves, whined in the shutters. Recreate pattern and you blunt chaos. A constant fan, rain sound at low volume, or a purpose-built white noise device can sand noise down. Avoid soundscapes that surprise you. Wails, thunder, sudden flutes. Your nervous system loves grooves, not solos. 12th lever. Treat sleep like weather, not a report card. Medieval people had bad nights. They just didn't turn them into identity crises. Adopt the same stance. You are not a failing project because you woke twice. If a night goes sideways, your job is to protect tomorrow's rhythm, not to decode the mystery with forensic intensity. Keep the daylight on caffeine, heavy on daylight, forgiving on demands, and right back to your evening cutoff. Don't chase payback sleep late. Let the tide correct over a couple of cycles. The fewer fixes you attempt, the faster the system restabilizes. Now layer these levers into small scripts, because a system you repeat beats a plan you admire. Example weekday. Lights down warm 2 hours pre-bed. Kitchen banked after supper. A 10-minute reset of the room. Wash, stretch, page, pillow. First sleep, maybe watching hour with a quiet task. Second sleep, morning light and a soft chime. Walk outside for 5 minutes, even if it's just to the mailbox and back. Coffee after sunlight, not before. Example weekend. Dinner early, a longer walk at dusk, a board game instead of a show, the same lights, downtime, a page of that slow book, then bed. Not austere, padded with pleasures. As medieval homes showed, comfort doesn't have to be complicated to be rich. Will you need every lever every night? No. The power of the medieval system is redundancy. If light fails you, the meal timing catches you. If stress spikes, the watching hour gives you a safe lane. If summer heat rises, breathability saves the night. You're building overlapping nets, so sleep doesn't have to be perfect to be enough. And when a 2 a.m. wake finds you anyway, as it will remember the old choreography, don't argue with the dark, sit inside it, do one gentle, chosen thing. Let the world stay dim and small. Then turn back, lie down, and let the second tide come. It almost always does. What happens when the rhythm breaks? Because it did. The medieval two-act night wasn't a rigid doctrine. It was a loose choreography that flexed for weather, work, worry, and joy. Understanding those edge cases is how you really see the strength of the system. Because a good system doesn't snap when life tugs it. It bends and returns. Start with winter's worst. Those knife-cold nights when the wind presses through every seam. That's when houses became clever machines. People sealed shutters early, pinned up extra cloth against the door's latch, and shifted sleeping closer to heat, either to a hearth's banked coals or to someone's back. Beds added layers like a tree, adds rings, linen sheets for skin, then wool blankets, then a heavy coverlet that moved as one piece, easy to heave at once if you had to turn. If it was genuinely brutal out, families nested. Children, who run hot like little furnaces, got the center. Elder bones found the edge with a foot ready to test the floor, and the person most comfortable waking at night slept nearest the brazier and the rushlight. That wasn't just cozy, it was contingency planning. One hand to warm a cup, one light to check the room, one body to reset the microclimate when the draft found a crack. Storms changed the soundtrack of sleep. Thunder and hard rain can jerk anyone awake. Medieval folks didn't pretend otherwise. They had a script. Let the rushlight burn a touch longer. Say a familiar line. If the roof groaned, someone did the circuit with a palm up to feel for leaks, then tucked under again. You'll notice a pattern. Reassurance by action first, explanation later. The goal wasn't to eliminate disruption. It was to keep disruption shallow so second sleep could still find its way back. Harvest season tugged the night in a different direction. Time risk, not weather risk. When rain threatened the cut grain, people worked until the moon said stop and sometimes past that. Did that wreck sleep? For a night or two, sure. But the culture tolerated elasticity. The following day's expectations loosened. Meals landed when they could. And once the rush passed, the nightly scaffolding, the same darkness, the same early supper, the same bedtime rituals, lured the body back to baseline. You didn't need a sleep recovery protocol. The habitat did the work. Birth and illness stretched the watching hour into a vigil, and even here the architecture and habits served. Beds with curtains made a warm, dim cave for labor. Midwives drifted in and out of the circle of light. Voices low, hands practiced. In sickness, a second pallet near the bed let a caregiver nap between checks. Medicines that sat poorly on a full belly waited for that midnight interval when the stomach had settled. The night watch wasn't a lonely ordeal. It was a recognized state neighbors, knew the signs, and stepped lightly. Festivity broke the rules on purpose, which is also part of a healthy sleep culture. Saints' days, weddings, midwinter revels, people stayed up, sang long, crowded rooms with heat and stories. Sleep shrank and shifted, and then the town slid back into ordinary dark the next night. Think of it as planned chaos, after which the curfew and the quiet felt like a relief again. The system didn't demand perfection. It offered a reliable default to return to. Children learned the choreography early, not in lectures by immersion. A bedtime wasn't a command, it was a sequence. Shutters, embers, washing, combing, a line or two of prayer, the same lullaby hummed into the same shoulder. Kids knew first sleep by feel and learned that waking at night wasn't a monster's sign, it was a chance to whisper, to be sent to the pot, to be tucked back in with the promise, there is more sleep yet. That phrase, more sleep yet, might be the medieval heart of sleep sanity. If you believe there's more sleep ahead, you don't panic when you surface. You float, you turn, you go back under. Elders had their own agreements with the night. Aching joints, touchy stomachs, a bladder with opinions, none of that surprised anyone. The fix wasn't shame, it was design. Stools and shoes where feet could find them. A brazier kept safely alive. A small drink at the bedside that didn't scald or shock. And if second sleep came shorter, the day made room for a sanctioned drowse by the fire after dinner, eyes half closed while hands still moved over some small task. Rest didn't have to be dark or horizontal to count. Let's talk fear, because the dark brings it. Night noises, nightmare images. That old human shiver at what we can't see. Medieval people felt it, but they had ways to file it into smaller drawers. Familiar sounds mattered. A watchman's call, a neighbour's stare, a dog's low huff. When your ear recognizes patterns, the unknown shrinks. Ritual language mattered too. Fixed phrases bracketed the mind. A sprig of herb at the bedpost wasn't superstition so much as a physical bookmark. Here is my place. Here is safety. Even the curtain's fabric became a signal. Amber in the candle's glow meant, stay small, stay soft. Nightmares themselves got folded into the routine. You woke, you breathed. You told the edge of it to the person beside you, or to the ceiling if you were alone. And then you did something deliberately boring. Stir the embers, fetch a sip, retie the bedcord loop that always works loose. You gave your hands a job so your mind couldn't invent 3 more shadows. Then you returned to the one thing the night is built to give. Another try. Anxiety thrives in unstructured space. The watching hour gave structure without noise. Travel sharpened all of this. On the road, you didn't control the room, but you still controlled the script. Arrive before curfew if you could. Eat when the kitchen was honest and hot. Take the straw that looked bright and sweet, not damp and matted. Place your boots the same way at every bed's foot so your hands could find them in the dark if you needed to. Ask for the quiet side away from the ale bench and the stable wall. If you woke at 1, you weren't the only one. The inn breathed in unison turns, sighs, a murmur. Someone rebanked the fire. Someone else padded to the pot. Shared rhythm makes unfamiliar rooms feel less sharp. Guildwork shows how sleep was protected upstream. Bakers set dough late but kept meals early, knowing the oven would claim their pre-dawn. Smiths cooled their shop fires well before sunset so the body heat could fall in time. Weavers, whose eyes did the finest work, stopped at dusk by rule rather than pride. Courts and councils backed the logic not because they ran sleep labs, but because they wanted reliable work tomorrow. Protect the night, doubled as protect the morning. Then there's the way seasons taught flexibility. People didn't pretend that January and June were the same species of night. Beds migrated, routines stretched or tightened, bells slid on the clock face of dawn, and no one acted betrayed by the sky. That posture, cooperate, don't conquer, is probably the biggest difference between their sleep and ours. We keep trying to pin sleep to a fixed schedule while we live on a moving planet. They let night breathe, and their lives breathed with it. You can copy that posture in small ways. When the days shorten, pull your light slow line earlier without drama. When they lengthen, let the morning widen. Make a winter comfort ritual, warm foot wash, heavier book, thicker blanket, and a summer one. Cool cloth, lighter page, window cracked. Identify your own edge cases. Big deadlines, storms, a new baby. Travel and write yourself a tiny, boring script for each. What stays the same, what shifts, what you'll forgive. Promise yourself, there is more sleep yet, and then behave like a person who believes it. Because the genius isn't in heroic nights. It's in the unheroic ones. The storm rattled 2 a.m., the harvest overtired 11:30, the inn's scratchy straw and neighbour's operatic snore where you still find your way back. That's what the medieval system excelled at. Not perfection, but recovery. Darkness that returns on schedule. Rituals that don't ask questions. Beds that adjust by hand. Meals that land early. A culture that expects wakefulness and gives it a job. The night bends. You bend with it. The tide comes in again. And when it does, when you tip into that second sleep with a body that trusts the script, you'll wake not with fireworks, but with the quiet conviction that the day has begun and that you belong in it. That's the point. Not a perfect score, a reliable morning. Let's do some myth-busting, because a lot of what we believe about good sleep is modern theatre expensive props, dramatic language, not much plot. Medieval nights weren't perfect, but they were honest. The stagecraft of their sleep was environmental, not psychological. Real darkness, cool air, breathable beds, early meals, work that made the body heavy, and a planned intermission. New dashboards. New sleep as a niche for self-improvement, just a habitat that nudged biology to do what it already wants to do. Myth 1. 8 unbroken hours or you're doomed. That rule is newer than espresso. The 2-act night first sleep, watching hour, second sleep wasn't a failure. It was a feature that showed up naturally when evenings got truly dark. If you wake at 2 a.m. and the room is dim and quiet, that's not your sleep breaking. That's your circadian system remembering how to stretch. The problem isn't the waking, it's the floodlight and the phone. Medieval logic says, expect the intermission sometimes. Give it something gentle to hold. Let it hand you back to sleep. When you stop treating a brief wake as an emergency, your body stops acting like it's one. Myth 2. Comfort equals softness. Not always. Those feather beds that signaled wealth. Lovely when pristine, but sweaty, bug-prone and suffocating when overused. Straw cheap, airy, replaceable. Often slept cooler and cleaner, especially in summer. Translation for today. Breathability beats plushness most of the year. If your mattress feels like a warm marshmallow by midnight, you're fighting physics. A simpler stacked linen or cotton sheets, a thin, breathable topper, a wool blanket you can fold back with one hand often sleeps better than a luxury sandwich you can't adjust without a forklift. Comfort is tunability plus airflow, not maximum squish. Myth 3. Sleep is purely individual. Parts of it are, but history says environment swallows willpower. When towns dimmed by law, people didn't need discipline to get drowsy. Darkness did the job. When kitchens closed with vespers, late-night digestion wasn't on the menu. When beds were designed to trap heat and mute drafts, bodies slid toward rest because the room wasn't arguing with them. We love to make sleep a character test. The medieval answer: build a room that passes the test for you. Myth 4. Privacy is the gold standard. It's a modern luxury with modern trade-offs. Shared beds solved warmth and worry. We don't need to go back to bunking with strangers to borrow the benefit, but we should name the gap. Loneliness shouts at midnight. One reason the watching hour felt calm is that people often weren't alone in it. There was a murmured voice, a shape in the next pallet, a hand to touch a shoulder. If nights feel sharp now, add human contact to your evenings. Call, walk, sit with someone. We try to solve loneliness with gadgets. Medieval people solved it with people. Myth 5. The right tool will fix sleep. Tools help only when they reinforce the habitat. A soft dawn lamp? Great because light is biology's steering wheel. A white noise machine? Useful because predictable sound hides the world's randomness. But most sleep gadgets fail because they attack symptoms instead of environment. Blue light blockers while the house blazes overhead, trackers that quantify anxiety, supplements that slam the brakes while you're still flooring the accelerator. The medieval test is simple. Does this tool turn the room toward dark, quiet, cool, breathable, and predictable? If not, it's probably theatre. Notice how the medieval blueprint also punctures a modern fear, that if we loosen control, sleep gets worse. Their system says the opposite. Loosen control over you, stop grading nights. Tighten control over the room. Lights, meals, layers, rituals. That swap is liberating. You don't need to be a better sleeper. You need to be a better stagehand. Now, let's translate the principles into concrete moves you can feel this week, because a good idea isn't helpful until it changes a Tuesday. Build a nightly lights law. Pick a hard time when the house flips to low warm light, no overheads. Put the switch on automation so you don't negotiate with future you. Add 2 tiny task-level lights. Clip lamp, low night light. Everything else sleeps. Make your bed seasonal. 2 stacks. Summer, linen divided by cotton sheets plus thin breathable topper plus light wool throw, and winter. Same sheets plus denser topper plus layered blankets. Label and store. Swap on the solstice as a ritual. If you run hot, put the airy stack on earlier. If you run cold, keep the heavier stack longer. Tunability wins. Adopt the watching hour kit. Pre-pack a drawer. Dim light, notebook, pen, a hand task, knitting, puzzle, rosary, anything quiet, a thermos or bottle, an herbal sachet. Waking at 2 a.m. shouldn't send you excavating a closet. You open the drawer, the night tells you what to do. Move dinner back by a little. Not monk early, just an hour earlier than usual, 4 nights this week. Keep protein, lower fat late, cool the palate warm broth, tea, rather than shock it cold. Bank the kitchen with a small ritual wipe, kettle off, single lamp. Watch first sleep arrive faster by accident. Front-load daylight. The medieval world blasted your retina with dawn. Step outside within an hour of waking, even for 3 minutes. It's a free, potent circadian anchor that sets up tonight's melatonin. If you can't get sun, open the biggest window and stare at the sky's brightest patch while you sip water. Then coffee. Make your room predictable, not silent. A fan or white noise device at the same level every night. No audio surprises. Think Watchman's steady lantern, not ocean storm. Pattern is what your nervous system trusts. Write a tiny edge case script. For storms, deadlines, travel, a kid's flu 2 sentences each. What stays the same? Lights law, kitchen banked, kit ready. And what you'll forgive, shorter second sleep. A 10-minute dawn drowse tomorrow. Post it where your 2 a.m. brain can read it. Upgrade linens before mattress. If your budget has one move, buy better sheets and a real wool blanket. Launder sheets hot, sun dry when possible. Fold and pull them tight when you make the bed. Friction plus breathability equals fewer midnight wrestles. Give evenings a warm landing. Borrow the foot wash ritual, a warm basin or shower for feet and calves, 30 seconds. It sounds trivial until you try it. Distal warmth helps core cooling, and the tactile cue says the day is done. More convincingly than any app timer. Let mornings widen. If life allows, make a 45-minute OK window for wake time. Pair a soft first alarm with a hard second. Put the soft one near the window so you meet light first, sound second. That breathing room lowers the dread that steals second sleep at 3 a.m. Now, what about dreams and the mind's mid-watch chatter? Medievals treated first sleep dreams like weather reports interesting, sometimes useful, not commandments. You can adopt the same stance. If you wake with a vivid image, jot 3 words in the notebook, not paragraphs. The act of catching the tail tells the mind you've listened. You don't need to hold the whole thing in your teeth. Then ease into a practiced, boring gesture, stretch fingers and toes. Turn the pillow. Retie the same bed. Cord loop of this century. The corner of your sheet. A note on fear. We've built nights where a slight wake opens 1,000 doors. Notifications, headlines, markets, messages. No wonder the mind sprints. The medieval room only offered 3 doors at 2 a.m. Quiet work, quiet prayer, quiet returning to bed. Fewer choices equals lower cognitive load equals easier re-entry. If your nights feel frantic, close doors. Delete apps that beg for attention at night, not because you're weak, but because wakeful brains are curious and misery-loving. Be kind to the creature you are at 2. And if you live with someone, co-author the rules. Medieval inns matched sleepers. You can match habits. Who runs hot? Give them a lighter blanket. Give the other a heavier one. Who wakes early? Edge seat, please. Who panics at 3? Write the script together and keep the kit where either of you can reach it. Shared rules are warmer than shared arguments. Here's the quiet victory lap. When the room does more of the work, your identity can do less. You stop being a bad sleeper and start being a person in a better habitat who sometimes wakes and crosses a small bridge. The bridge is the point. First, sleep flows out. The watching hour lays the world flat. Second, sleep flows in. Dawn comes not with drama, but with the simple, old conviction. There is more day yet, and you belong in it. Let's field test this in real life across a few different worlds you might recognize, because principles don't matter until they can survive a Tuesday with crying kids, a Wednesday flight, and a Thursday deadline. The medieval blueprint isn't a costume. It's a set of levers you can throw in wildly modern rooms. We'll tune the habitat, write tiny scripts, and let sleep rediscover you. Start with the parent house, the one where bedtime looks like a circus that forgot the tent. You can't force 8 serene hours, but you can engineer repeatable cues. Think of the home as a dimming theatre. 90 minutes before lights out, the whole house shifts. Overheads off, only warm lamps at knee and table height. Screens retreat except for a single TV on movie night, with brightness down and a firm end time. Kitchen banks early, counters wiped, kettle off, the night's done scent of a wiped cutting board. For kids, trade the go to bed now. Fight for a ladder of steps they learn to climb in order. Pajamas, 2-minute teeth, warm washcloth on feet and hands, pick one book, crack the window an inch, same lullaby or paragraph every night. You're not chasing perfect behavior, you're teaching a sequence their bodies will eventually run on autopilot. When a night wake happens and it will treat it like the watching hour. Whisper, water sip, brief rock or hand on the back. Lights stay low, no new show, no snack, back down. The point isn't to win, it's to keep disruptions shallow so everyone can fall back into second sleep. Apartment with city glow and sirens. You're fighting the medieval enemy light and the modern enemy random noise. Go environmental, not heroic. Hang a double layer. Inexpensive blackout roller shades plus linen curtains. The roller does the blocking. The linen softens edges so the room doesn't feel cave, like by day. Put a draft stopper under the door to cut hallway light and smells. For sound, think predictability. A steady fan or white noise unit that never varies, placed between you and the noise source. Avoid rainstorm tracks that throw surprises. If your neighbor clatters at 11, move your personal lights law earlier. Your body needs a head start on melatonin to have enough momentum to ignore midnight. Bed stack matters more here than mattress brand. Breathable sheets, a blanket you can fold back with one hand, no heavy comforter that turns the bed into a sauna. You're building an insulated microclimate inside an uncooperative macroclimate. Shift work is where most advice collapses. You can't move the sun, so you have to fake it convincingly. Pick a stable anchor your wake time on off days and keep it within a 60-90 minute band even when your shifts swing. Use light as medicine. Blast yourself with bright light, outside if possible. At the start of your day, even if that's 6 p.m., wear amber or dark glasses on the commute home to keep dawn out of your brain. Black out the room like a photography lab for your night. The watching hour still applies, just rotated. Expect to wake at your circadian midpoint. Plan a non-stimulating interval. Stretch, page, prayer, stitch, and go back down. Meal timing should orbit your personal sunrise. Biggest meal in the first third of your wake time, lightest at the end. And write a crisis script for the week your schedule flips. 2 split naps the day before the switch, 90 minutes and 20 minutes. Then full commitment to the new light window. Travel next. Medieval's optimized inns with eyes and questions. You'll do the same with hotels and relatives' guest rooms. Pack a micro-habitat. Compact blackout stickers for the thermostat and router LEDs, a travel white noise machine, or a fan app downloaded and offline, an eye mask that actually seals, a tiny amber clip light, and a sachet, lavender or hops, for scent continuity. On arrival, set the room. Kill LEDs, close heavy curtains and clamp the gap with a pants hanger. Place the noise device, stash the remote and its germ colony. Out of sight, lay out your between sleeps kit. Jet lag is not a moral failing, it's light math. On eastbound flights, push light earlier for 3 days pre-flight. On westbound, pull it later. After landing, chase local morning light hard and avoid late caffeine. If you wake at 2, treat it like the watching hour, no screen, dim clip light, small task, and let second sleep catch you. You'll feel 80% human by day 3. The other 20% resolves when ritual outruns clock shock. The deadline week, the one with evening adrenaline, requires a medieval move. Separate work ends from night begins, with a tangible hinge. Pick a ritual so physical it bulldozes thought. A 5-minute apartment reset, dishes, counters, trash. A warm foot wash in the sink, 10 slow hip hinges and shoulder rolls, then a boring page. If your brain insists on shouting, open the notebook and write a night ledger, 3 lines. What can wait? What must happen tomorrow? What I already did today. Close it. Place the pen on top. You're telling your nervous system the watchman is on duty. It can hand over the keys. If you still pop awake at 1, use your kit and refuse the laptop. In the morning, you'll write better for having slept some than for having wrestled a deck at 3:12 a.m. under surgical lights. Pain nights, back, shoulder, migraine, can turn sleep into war. The medieval answer was pragmatic ergonomics. Stack your bed like a friendly nest. A thin, responsive topper, latex or wool, to distribute pressure. A small pillow under knees if you're on your back or between knees if you're on your side. A rolled towel supporting the waist or rib cage where the mattress leaves a gap. Heat before bed not too hot relaxes tissue. Cold on a focal spot can quiet inflammation. Keep remedies at arm's length so you don't trek bright-eyed to the kitchen. Pain will still visit, but if you can keep the room dark and the body supported, second sleep can sneak around it more often than you think. What about loneliness, the midnight kind that medieval communal sleeping accidentally softened? You don't have to adopt a bunkmate. You do need to feed the social animal by day. Schedule human contact late afternoon or early evening. A walk with a neighbor, a call with a friend, dinner at a table with someone. If the bed itself feels like an empty theater, Preload a voice into the night, a short voice memo from someone you love that you play once at dim volume before first sleep, then phone goes dark. It's not about content. It's about the nervous system registering, I am in a web. Lonely brains grab clocks. Held brains let go. Let's write tiny scripts for the most common 2 a.m. gremlins. Storm wake. Breathe 4 long exhales. Check leak circuit with palm. Bank fear with action. Blanket edge snug. Pillow reset. No lights up. Back down. Goal. Make the wake a page turn, not a chapter. Heart race wake. Sit up. Feet to floor. 10 slow calf raises. 10 finger opens divided by closes. Sip warm water. Long exhale. Lie down. The body gets a job. Panic loses its gig. Idea avalanche. Notebook. 1 minute. Bullet the top 3. Close book. Put pen on top. Hand on belly. Count 12 slow breaths. Promise morning. You'll read it. Keep the promise. Hunger poke. Half cup warm milk or water with honey. 1 bite of something bland. No fridge glare. No meal. You're appeasing, not dining. Noise spike. Noise device up 1 notch for 2 minutes, then down. Long exhale. Back to bed. You control the soundscape. The world doesn't. Maintenance is boring, and that's the point. Pick a weekly bed day, like medieval straw turn. Wash sheets hot. Sun them if possible. Beat pillows in a clean dryer cycle. Vacuum mattress. Check drafts. Reset lamp bulbs to warm. Empty the nightstand of goblins, bills, chargers, rogue snacks. The signal is as psychological as physical. This place is kept. Kept places invite rest. Finally, hold the posture that made their system durable. Cooperate, don't conquer. If the season shifts, let your Light's law move with it. If the household changes a new baby, a new job shrink your ambitions, strengthen your rituals, and trust that more sleep yet is not a myth, but a math problem that biology is very good at solving when you stop throwing curveballs. Build a room that wants you asleep. Let the room do its job. And when you wake at 2, don't litigate. Cross the small bridge you've prepared. Then turn back, lie down, and let the second tide come. It almost always does. Let's zoom out from beds and bedrooms and look at the whole ecosystem. The neighborhood, the block, the city. Because sleep isn't just a private behavior, it's a public good. Medieval towns didn't talk about sleep equity, but they accidentally practiced it. Their curfews, their darkness rules, their market hours, all of it damped late-night chaos and gave most people a shot at a predictable night. You could feel the whole community lift you toward rest. Bells telling you when to close the day, ovens and forges cooling on schedule, streets dimming into silhouettes. It wasn't utopia, but the baseline said, night is for quiet. Compare that to our apartment windows glowing like aquarium glass at 1:37 a.m. The city never signals enough. No wonder our nervous systems forget how to land. If we were to borrow that civic logic now, we'd build sleep support into the rhythms of the places we live. I'm not saying reintroduce fines for candles. I'm saying we normalize soft closures, restaurants that dim by rule an hour before close, gyms that stop blasting club tracks after 9, residential blocks that prioritize downward-facing streetlights with warm color temperatures instead of blue-white floodlights that bleach the sky. We'd write small, boring policies, trash pickup not at 3 a.m., delivery windows that dodge midnight, bar patios with acoustic treatments so one person's insomnia doesn't echo into 40 bedrooms. That's not cranky. That's community health. Medievals didn't call it circadian-friendly zoning, but they did it anyway. Turn down the town so bodies can turn down too. Schools and work schedules deserve the same rethink. Bells in monasteries moved with dawn. We've shackled ours to clocks that don't care about latitude or season. Imagine a school calendar that breathes. Start times that push later in deep winter, then lighten with spring. Teens' night, biased brains that they are wouldn't have to fight sunrise to solve algebra. Guilds did this in spirit. Bakers early, weavers later, farmers by the Sunday. They didn't pretend every craft woke the same. We kind of do, and we punish the ones whose biology doesn't match the bell. Inside homes, we can treat sleep like a family project, not an individual virtue signal. Medieval households made the whole room cooperate. Shared rituals, banked fires, predictable dim. Your modern translation is a family lights law and a shared closing sequence that's more choreography than nagging. When the lamps go warm, the kitchen winds down, the small chores fall into place, and someone runs the warm washcloth over a toddler's muddy calves. Everybody in the ecosystem gets the same message. We're heading for first sleep. Even if bedtimes differ, the house's mood tilts toward quiet. It's a gentle social gravity you don't have to argue about nightly. What about technology? Medievals treated tools as servants of the environment. Candles existed, but they bowed to the dark. Bells existed, but they bowed to dawn. Our devices swagger around like the boss of the circadian universe. Flip that dynamic. Make your tech enforce the habitat instead of undermining it. Smart plugs that kill glare on schedule. Phones that lock screens after the house's lights law. Wearables that stop buzzing after the kitchen's banked. If you use a tracker, use it like medieval dream notes. Notice patterns, then put it down. Numbers are useful when they tell you to soften the room at 9, not when they scold you at 7 a.m. For sleep debt, you can't fix before coffee. Here's a civic scale habit worth stealing straight. The watching hour as a public permission slip. We've pathologized middle of the night wakefulness as failure. Medieval cultures domesticated it, a recognized, often productive interval between two good sleeps. Imagine if we treated that window like a quiet lane rather than a freeway ramp. Apartment buildings could publish simple guidance. If you're up between 1 and 3, keep lights low and sound soft. Libraries could host micro-courses on gentle midnight practices, stretching, breath, pen and paper pages. Health systems could teach between sleeps, routines to insomniacs that aren't just stop worrying. Because telling a worried brain not to worry is about as effective as telling a storm not to rain. Give it a ritual. Give it a small, boring job. Give it a way back to bed. There's also a justice angle medieval people stumbled into without naming: shared warmth. Communal sleep arrangements weren't always romantic, but they were efficient, and they kept poor bodies warmer than solitude would have. In our better heated world, that translates differently. Not piling into a bed, but making sure the solitary aren't left to night's sharp edges alone. Neighborhood check-ins, evening walks, community rooms that go dim and quiet after dinner where older folks can sit with others without noise or glare, tiny civic gestures that make nights less hostile. Loneliness is a sleep disorder disguised as a social problem. Medievals solved it with proximity. We can solve it with presence. Let's talk design. If you're building or renovating, copy the medieval cheats. East-facing windows in sleeping rooms. Pale wall colors that multiply daylight so artificial light can be lower at night. Overhangs and trees that cut summer sun so bedrooms don't soak heat all day. Small, warm, low lights placed where your hands actually reach by the door, at the bedside, near the water glass so you don't need to torch the ceiling at midnight to find a thing. And the most underrated feature: cross-ventilation. Moving air cools skin and carries the faint night smells that tell a brain, outside is still, you can be still. The medieval light cup, a little curved niche that brightened one candle, becomes our reflective sconce, or a lampshade that throws a downward pool, not a room-wide blast. On the cultural side, demystify naps the way they did. Medieval people gave names to little rests and let them count. Bring back the sanctioned drowse 10 minutes after lunch in an armchair, eyes half closed, hands busy with some small rhythmic task. Offices could trade the caffeinated stand-up for a 10-minute soft reset afternoon, blinds half lowered, no emails, just a collective decrescendo. You'll get the time back at 4 p.m, when nobody's fighting the molasses hour. We can even rethink noise like a guild. Instead of chasing silence, a losing battle in any city, pursue predictable patterns. Quiet hours posted and respected, deliveries in blocks, dog parks far enough that the nighttime bark chorus doesn't flashbang through bedrooms. Randomness wakes, rhythm lulls. The medieval watchman wasn't loud, he was regular. That's why his lantern soothed more than it startled. He was the metronome of the dark. And when crises hit, a heat wave, a storm, a festival that runs long, steel the medieval stance. Loosen expectations, strengthen rituals. Don't chase a pristine night during chaos. Protect re-entry afterward. Run the lights law anyway. Keep supper early if you can. Put the room back together the next evening, even if you only slept 4 hours. The point is not to punish yourself for exceptions. It's to give your body a runway home. Their genius wasn't perfect nights. It was quick recovery. I'll leave you with one more design pattern they lived by without naming it. Low friction, high repeat. Everything about their sleep habitat made the right choice easier than the wrong one. Darkness cheaper than light. Kitchens cooler than hunger. Beds that adjusted by hand. Rituals that took minutes, not willpower. That's the test for any change you make. Will exhausted you do this on a Tuesday? If yes, you've built something medieval in the best way. If not, simplify until you have. Because the goal here isn't to cosplay a century where plagues outnumbered pillows. It's to restore the parts of night that humans are built for. Evenings that dim without debate. A first sleep that arrives on cue. A watching hour that calms more than it claws. A second sleep that finds you because you didn't chase it. And a morning that begins not with violence, but with the quiet conviction that the day belongs to you and you belong to it. Let's translate everything into a simple, durable sleep architecture. You can build over 12 ordinary evenings the kind of plan that survives cravings, deadlines, and doorbells. Not a boot camp. A rehearsal. The medieval night wasn't a diet, it was a kitchen. You're not chasing a number, you're installing a room that keeps handing you rest. Day 1-3. Lay the rails. Light, meal, ritual. Pick a household lights law, 1 moment each night when the house shifts to warm, low light and overheads go quiet. Don't wait for motivation. Use automation. At that time, your lamps dim, your living room becomes amber, and screens switch to lock screens after 5 minutes of inactivity. Pair it with a food boundary you can live with. Kitchen banked 2 hours before your first sleep. Not monk level. Just a clear end to heavy cooking and scrolling snacks. Then bolt on a tiny ritual that's too small to fail. Rinse face, warm cloth over feet and hands, 2 slow stretches, hinge forward, roll shoulders. 1 boring page, lights out. If you wake around 2, you're not broken. You're in the watching hour. Sit up without turning the room into noon. Do a soft task for 10 minutes. Breath, bead, stitch, scribble 3 words. Then climb back into second sleep. These first 3 nights are about permission, not performance. Day 4-6. Tune the bed and air. Microclimate wins. Strip the bed and rebuild the stack deliberately. Bottom. Fitted sheet pulled drum tight. Wrinkles are tiny saboteurs. Middle. A thin, breathable topper latex or wool so pressure points don't argue. Top. A wool blanket that moves as a single sheet, plus a lighter throw you can flick away with one hand at 2 a.m. Add a second, flatter pillow in the nightstand for pain nights. Under knees on your back, between knees on your side. While you're at it, hunt drafts, door sweep, window seal, a towel at the threshold. Start the fan or air purifier at 1 steady level and never touch it again. Be the watchman's lantern, not the thunderclap. Open the window a crack if your air is still. Moving air whispers safe to the mammal brain. Sun your pillows if weather allows. Yes, the sun still launders in a way dryers don't. You're recreating the medieval move. A box bed microclimate inside a cranky macroclimate. Day 7-9. Move the sun. Morning anchors. Evening ease. The medieval world did light right. Bright at dawn, honest dark at night. You'll fake that with 2 moves. Morning. Go outside within an hour of waking, even for 3 minutes. Stare at the brightest patch of sky, not the sun, while you sip water. Delay coffee until you've seen that light. Caffeine lands cleaner when circadian timing is set. Evening. Set your largest screen to power down at the lights law, then keep 2 tiny warm lights available for task light only. If you're a news doom scroller, write a "no new inputs after X" rule. Headlines are counterfeit emergencies that breed 2 a.m. litigations. Replace the last 30 minutes with a closing pass through your place. Put dishes to rest. Stack the book you'll read tomorrow. Lay out morning shoes. You're telling your nervous system the watch is changing hands. That sense of keptness is a sedative without side effects. Day 10-12. Edges, not exceptions. Scripts for the gremlins. Bad nights aren't failures. They're what scripts exist for. Write yours. Storm wake. Keep a small flashlight aimed at the floor. Check the leak circuit with your palm. Bank the blanket. Return. Heart race wake. Sit up. Feet flat. 10 calf raises. 10 slow hand spreads. Long exhale to a count you can keep. Lie down. Idea avalanche. Notebook open. 3 bullets only. Must, can wait, already did. Pen on top, done. Hunger. Half cup warm milk or water with honey. No fridge glare, no hunt. Noise spike. Nudge white noise. 1 notch for 2 minutes, then back. Pain. Deploy the extra pillow. Change position. Add heat or cold you stashed at arm's reach. The point is to move hands before mind spirals. Action shrinks anxiety's stage. Now let's put this into 3 different worlds, so you can see the kit flex. World 1. The overstimulated creative. You live by ideas and deadlines, and evenings ramp up as your brain catches fire. Your fix isn't austerity, it's choreography. Set Light's law 90 minutes before bed. 10 minutes after that, perform the ledger. 1 page where you ask 3 things. What did I actually move today? What will I move tomorrow? What can I postpone? Sign it like a contract and put it face down. Switch to a low cognition task that feels tactile but aimless. Organize pencils, fold laundry, wipe counters. If you wake at 2 with an idea, congratulate your brain for clocking in early. Capture the title, not the book. Creativity returns at dawn if you didn't burn the theatre down at midnight. World 2. The caregiver house. Your nights belong to babies, elders, or both. You can't control wake windows, but you can keep them shallow. Pre-stash a resupply tray at bedside. Soft lamp, diapers divided by meds, water, small snack, wipes, burp cloth, extra pillow. The rule: no overheads, no phones, no new inputs. Warm hands, low voice, minimum motion, and back down as if you're crossing a porch, not moving in. Keep your own drowse legal. A 10-minute afternoon sit with eyes half closed and hands on a repetitive task. Don't call it a nap if the word stresses you. Call it a reset. Medieval households normalized that micro-rest. You can too without guilt. Your measure of success isn't a perfect night. It's a predictable re-entry. World 3. The traveler. Your hotel room is an inn with better plumbing and worse LEDs. On arrival, medievalize it in 5 minutes. Kill or tape over every little light. Thermostat, TV, router. Clamp curtains with pant hangers. Place your white noise device. Set a single warm lamp. Lay out your between sleeps kit. If jet lag wakes you at 2, treat it exactly like the watching hour. No TV, no laptop, very dim page. Stretch, back down. Chase local morning light hard. Eat the largest meal in your first third of wake time. Keep the last one light. You're not conquering time zones. You're persuading a mammal to trust a rhythm in a strange den. A few advanced tricks that feel medieval in spirit. The linen advantage. Switch 1 set of sheets to linen for summer. It breathes like straw without the crinkle, letting core temp fall faster. Pair with a thin wool throw. You'll sweat less, wake less, and stop wrestling the duvet. The foot wash wedge. A warm 60-second foot and calf rinse right before bed or right after a midnight wake is a tiny miracle distal warmth. Helps core cooling and signals off duty better than any notification. The east window. If you can, move your bed so first light touches the room at your soft alarm. It's a free monastic bell, and it's kinder than a scream. In winter, swap to a gradual lamp. The herb pocket. Lavender and hops in a tiny sachet under the pillowcase. Smell is a powerful state cue. If you reserve that scent for nights, your nervous system will start preloading drowsy when it shows up. The rope and straw idea. Modernized. Think tunability. Keep a second, thinner topper in the closet for summer. Rotate your mattress quarterly. Air bedding in daylight monthly. A bed that can change is better than one that's perfect once. The no new input spell. Set your phone to downtime at Light's Law and put it in a different room. Keep a dumb clock by the bed if you must know the time. Medieval nights had 3 doors. Give yourself 3, not 3,000. What about days that go sideways? You'll have them. When you break the plan, don't pay it back with heroics. Protect the anchors. Morning light, early supper, Light's Law, small ritual. Skip the self-story about being a bad sleeper. You're a person living with weather on the sky and in the head. The medieval posture wins here. Cooperate with the night you got, and the next one improves. A word on kids and teens. because their biology argues for mercy. Little ones cue off ritual more than clock. Give them the same landing sequence every evening, and accept that the line wiggles with growth spurts and colds. Teens are built for later nights. Fight them less, dim the house anyway, and aim for a little later start where you can. If that's impossible, chase morning light and sanity over perfection. More sleep yet applies to households, not just individuals. Finally, hold the simplest truth we keep stepping over. You don't have to earn sleep, you have to allow it. Medieval nights worked because the environment did the asking for you. Darkness, cheap, light dear. Quiet the default, clamour the exception. Beds tunable by hand. Meals placed where digestion behaves. A midnight lane that had a name and a job. Build that mood with modern tools, and your nights stop being a performance and start being a place you enter. First, sleep flows out. The watching hour lays the mind flat. Second, sleep comes back on its own feet, and you rise not triumphant, just certain that the day belongs to you. Let's land the plane gently, like dawn light sliding across a floorboard, by stitching everything into one living pattern you can carry forward. Think of this as a vow you make with the night, not a contract you'll get graded on. The medieval secret wasn't perfection, it was cooperation. Darkness helped, habit helped, people helped. But the most important shift was in posture. Stop wrestling sleep like an opponent and start arranging its stage. So here's your re-enchant the night script. Simple enough to remember when you're tired, flexible enough to survive real life. 1. Decide what night is for. It isn't for productivity, sprints, news autopsies, or arguments with your own brain. It's for 2 gentle acts with a quiet bridge between first sleep and second sleep. You don't have to force the intermission. You only need to welcome it if it arrives. Say it out loud tonight seriously, whisper it into the room. If I wake, I'll keep the room small, do one soft thing and go back. The sentence is your watchman's lantern. 2. Dim by law, not by mood. Pick a time and make it automatic. Overheads off, lamps warm, screens locked. This is the modern curfew without the scolding. If your housemates forget, the house won't. The switches will do the remembering. That one move buys you half the battle. Melatonin rises when light falls, and, like medieval bells, predictable signals calm nervous systems. 3. Treat your bed like a tool, not a throne. Tune it. Rotate it. Layer it for the season. Make the sheet tight, the blanket movable, the pillow adjustable. Air and sun are cleaners. Give them access. A bed you can change is a bed that keeps saying yes. The straw ticks lesson wasn't nostalgia. It was control by hand instead of by purchase. 4. Put the kitchen to sleep. Bank it 2 to 3 hours before you do. Wipe, kettle off, last cup warm. A late bite sometimes happens. Favor bland and little. You're not punishing yourself. You're setting tomorrow up to feel clear. The medievals weren't saints, they were practical. You can be, too. 5. Write the edge scripts now, not at 2 a.m. Storm wake, check, tuck, return. Racing heart, move small muscles, exhale longer than you inhale, return. Idea flood. 3 bullets, pen down, return. Hunger, a sip, a bite, return. Pain, pillow here, heat there, return. Notice the constant? Return. The night has more sleep yet. 6. Make mornings resemble kindness. If possible, widen wake time by 45 minutes. Light first, then sound. Outside for 3 minutes, sky is medicine you don't have to swallow. Coffee after light, it lands better. You'll discover that mornings you greet, rather than grab repay you all day. 7. Protect human warmth. If you share a bed, agree like innkeepers. Who runs hot? Who runs cold? Who takes the edge? What happens when the watching hour finds one of you? If you sleep alone, add evening contact by design, call, walk, a brief chat with a neighbor. Loneliness shouts at midnight. Social fiber quiets it. 8. Replace heroics with boring repeatables. Weekly, bed day. Monthly linen reset in daylight. Seasonal swap of layers. Tiny foot wash wedge most nights. A page of something slow. None of these are exciting. That's the point. Boring wins by outlasting mood. If you want a tangible way to begin, try a 1-week medieval night experiment. 7 small vows you can keep without white-knuckling. Night 1. Install the lights law. Automation on. One tiny lamp stays, everything else sleeps. Night 2. Rebuild the bed stack. Pick summer or winter mode. Night 3. Bank the kitchen early and end with a warm sip. Night 4. Put a between sleeps kit in the drawer. Night 5. Step outside within an hour of waking. Sky first, phone later. Night 6. Write your edge case script on a card. Place it in the nightstand. Night 7. Run a full closing sequence. Light's Law tiny tidy wash. Foot warm 2 stretches, 1 slow page out. Then notice not measure what shifts. Maybe first sleep comes sooner. Maybe the 2 a.m. wake stops feeling accusatory. Maybe second sleep finds you faster because you stop trying to earn it. The point isn't to collect perfect nights, it's to build a room the average night can trust. You'll slip. Everyone slips. Travel, deadlines, babies, grief, summer heat that turns a pillow into a skillet, these will tug you off pattern. When they do, borrow the medieval move we've returned to again and again. Loosen expectation, strengthen ritual. Don't chase lost hours with elaborate payback schemes. Protect the anchors, dark, early supper, Light's Law, small closing. Chase dawn light the next morning, and let 2 or 3 cycles do what bodies have always done. Self-correct when we stop throwing noise at them. Let me leave you with a picture you can keep in your pocket for the next 2 a.m. You wake. The room is more silhouette than detail. Somewhere there's the faintest sound fan, wind, a city breathing. Your eyes don't lunge for numbers. Your hand finds the small lamp, but doesn't turn it on. You sit, feel the sheets cool, and take 4 long exhales. Maybe you write 3 words. Call Eva Monday. Maybe you retie the lazy corner of the fitted sheet because small order makes big anxieties shrink. Maybe you sip warm water and feel it travel down like a calm announcement. 10 minutes pass the way a cloud passes over a field, noticeable, not dramatic. You slide back down. The mattress receives you. You don't bargain with sleep or beg it. You simply stop auditioning for it, the way medieval households did when they called the interval the watching hour instead of my failure hour. And as you stop performing, second sleep, unimpressed by hustle, steps forward and does what it has done for human beings for a very long time. It returns on its own schedule because you gave it darkness, stillness, permission, and a path. We've spent a century turning sleep into a project and a status symbol. Medieval people, without meaning to, left us a humbler wisdom. Make the night simple and the day honest, and the body will choose rest because rest is what the body knows. Darkness cheap, light dear. Meals when the sun is friendly. Beds that breathe. A bridge at midnight that belongs to you. And mornings that start not with violence, but with the quiet conviction that the world has turned again and invited you along. If you remember nothing else, remember this. You don't fix sleep. You host it. Build a room that wants you asleep. Let the room do its work. And when you wake tonight, next week, in some winter with the wind fingering the shutters, cross the small bridge you prepared. On the other side, there is more sleep yet. There almost always is.